Welcome, everybody, to the Advanced Selling Podcast, the longest running sales training podcast in the history of podcasts. Another solo episode. My B. Neal here. I was with Bill this morning, actually recording, and now I'm here on solo episode, kind of solo. Introduce my guest here in a minute. Don't forget my solo episodes. By the way, in January, you're going to see a really cool little fun thing that we're doing for my solo episodes. I think Bill's working on some stuff for his too. But we are powered by the Blind Zebra Sales Operating System. We are currently registering for certification for our January certification class. So if you're interested in how to become certified in the Blind Zebra Sales Operating System and allow me to be your personal head coach to certify you, just go to our website, blind-zebra.com, or even, I've been giving this out. I don't know if I should do this or not, but Bryan, Bryan at blind-zebra is my email. So you can send all your hate mail to me too about me screwing up your fantasy football leagues, but please don't do that. So with that, thrilled to have, now I'm not alone. I have a guest. Welcome to the Advanced Selling Podcast from Sales Intel, Chelsea Madden. Chelsea, welcome to the Advanced Selling Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
This is awesome. And I have to say, because we just met, and you have an absolute contagious laugh, don't you? You do. You like, see, it's just fantastic. I'm just going to hope you giggle the whole time. It's really fun. My wife, who's also a Blind Zebra's CEO, is also a very giggly human being. It's very fun. So just tell us a little bit about how you got to the role that you're in, what you're doing now. And then we'll get into talk about our topic today. We're going to talk about how to know when people are ready to engage or when they're ready to get into the process with us. That's a word called intent. And I'll tell the listeners, if you've been listening to Bill and me for a long time, we talk about intent as our intention, as like a spiritual thing. Here, we're talking about a little bit more mechanical intent. We'll get to that in a minute. So Chelsea, tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Started selling at the age of 8 at a farmer's market and never turned around or looked back.
What did you sell at the farmer's market?
Oh, everything, but mainly apples. I worked for an apple orchard, awesome. And I still think that I hold the quota for the most apple cider sold in a season. But
that is just awesome.
Something to be super proud about.
Fantastic.
But actually, from like a career perspective, I moved from nonprofits into the advertising space and worked for newspapers way back when, and really had a Rolodex at some point in my sales history. And then transitioned into SaaS and have been in the data space ever since and currently working at Sales Intel.
That's awesome. What a great story. I interviewed my daughter when she was a Girl Scout. She's 22 now. Yeah. But there's a podcast episode of me interviewing her when she was 9. Aww. It's my favorite episode. If you look at Bryan interviews his favorite salesperson ever, it's in the archives. That's fantastic. And I asked you, what's that?
Did she sell a lot of cookies?
No, she's a teacher now. She'd say this if she was on the show. She hates selling. Anything she hates buying from salespeople, hates it. Yeah. So I love that you kept it going. It's really, really awesome. And we have to go back and do some Gen Z, millennial interpretation. So Rolodex is a little thing that we all have with paper that had names and business cards on it, right? Newspapers are these things that they used to print on paper and deliver them to your mailbox every morning. It told you what was going on, now replaced by the internet and your phone. So we had to translate for the kids. Got to translate for the kids. And I also asked you, I said, "Oh, you're from Pittsburgh. You a Steelers fan?" And you said,
"I used to be."
And then you said,
"I'm married into the Commanders."
She married. I'm going to let that be now. As an NFL referee, I don't make any comments about teams or anything like that. But on the personal front, I'm just going to let that be.
I mean, they're having an amazing season this year.
This is true. This is true.
The first of many after holding season tickets for 10 years.
Yes, this is a very, very good point. But that's really funny and that's tough blood, that leaving the Steelers blood to Commanders blood. That's a big deal from what
my dad still hasn't gotten over it.
I'm sure he hasn't. Your poor Hubs is nope, out. So, okay, this is awesome. So let's talk a little bit about, we talked about this word intent. So let's talk about just broad definition, because it's a very, by the way, SaaS stands for software as a service. Most know that, some don't. It's very buzzy in this SaaS in software. It's they call it intent data. How do I know when someone's ready to engage? Non-SaaS companies don't know it as well. So just explain a little bit, what is intent, buying intent in the first place? How do you define it?
Yeah. So it can come by a whole slew of different terms. Propensity to purchase, right? It can also be my best description is, imagine that you're purchasing a car, right? And you start doing all the research. You go to Kelley Blue Book and you want to compare different between Nissan and Honda and Toyota, all of a sudden, every single place that you go, you see advertisements.
Mm.
That is essentially intent. You have done research on something, and though that research is being sold to businesses, and those businesses are now displaying advertisements to you because you've shown the propensity to buy. You've done some type of investigative research, intelligence, etc., and now are showing this intent to purchase.
Mm-hmm. And it's like our phones are listening to us. We all know this, right?
Yes.
And there's also this thing. Now, I don't know if this is true or not. I heard this thing called the reticular activator in your brain. That's like when you buy a red car, you see all the red cars. Or I have a Bronco, and all of a sudden I see all the Broncos. Is that part of this too? Is there a little bit of psychology behind this? Like all of a sudden I'm noticing I'm going to go buy business furniture for my office, and all of a sudden I start seeing these ads and things.
Well, a little bit of the psychology, of course. There's going to be that suggestive material that comes through. But at the end of the day, your propensity is being purchased by companies that sell what you're looking to purchase.
Interesting.
Right? So you might be getting an advertisement from Kia, never looked at Kia. But because you looked at Toyota, Nissan, Mitsubishi, all of a sudden Kia is like, I better get in front of this person before they make a decision and buy my competitor. So yes, I would say that there's some psychology around it. Like I'm noticing more car ads, but there are more car ads being presented to you.
Double whammy. Interesting. Yeah. So I'm a seller. I'm a B2B seller. That's who listens to the Advanced Selling Podcast.
Yeah.
And I'm out doing prospecting work or my marketing. So what you've mentioned so far is probably a marketing function. Is that fair?
Yes, but sellers have, this is where the advantage comes to sellers. If you know how to use this data, your communication with that account can be skyrocketed.
Interesting.
It's all about how you apply that, not Big Brother in any way, right?
Yeah.
Many sellers are like, I know that you're looking to buy a car. Nobody wants to know that you're looking to buy a car, right? Yeah. And you want it to be 4-door and green, right? You want to come in with a softer approach, and you want to come in with why you're different than everything else that they're looking at.
Interesting.
And so it's about creating that ABM strategy, account-based marketing, right? Or account-based sales strategy, and leaning into what you know about them, and then being able to form that into your sales pitch.
That's fantastic. So if you don't know what Chelsea's talking about here with ABM, account-based marketing, we are big fans at Blind Zero of account-based marketing. Yes. We are in the middle of one of our first real big ABM campaigns, and it's working phenomenally well. For the number, we started really small. We got really great results so far. Sellers, some people that listen to this have a big marketing group that supports them in marketing. Some of them don't. Some of them work for a small company that has no marketing. They might have a marketing person, but that person's probably not running ABM type campaigns. What are some things that sellers could do that would go under the heading of ABM type stuff in their prospecting activity?
Yeah. So if you've access to this intent data, once you know what they're actively researching on, using those topics, they typically are very, very specific topics. Using those topics in your opening sentences of your emails, in your subject lines of your emails, when you're leaving voicemail messages. Again, not in the Big Brother way of like, I know you're looking for this, but talking about those topics within those 3 areas really is that psychology component that you were mentioning.
Yeah.
It's the awareness that, hey, they need something. You're now drawing attention to it in a very subliminal way. Not calling it in big, billboard ways of like, we have your car, but more of like, here's how we can under the radar go identifying that you have a need and we have what you're looking for. That is probably the best way that a seller can use this.
Yeah. And that would be for listeners. Bill and I are really, really big on authenticity and intention. This intent data stuff starts to push that a little bit. And so really important for our listeners to be super clean with what Chelsea's saying, that it's a knowledge, it's a data point. Now, I'll also say out of duty, if I knew you were Googling around for office furniture and I did that, I'd love to be a resource for you, whether you buy my furniture or someone else's. There's some design elements that we can help with. We can talk about, the levels of, because you can do everything from fancy steel case stuff to used stuff and everything in between. And so it's just a reason to be a resource. It's a trigger point, right? Is that right? What you're getting at? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Versus saying, hey man, I got some great chairs and stuff. I know you're looking for chairs, and the office furniture is like, that's too weird. Isn't it?
And Bryan, you made a comment earlier. You said about how it kind of controls the funnel, or it becomes more specific intent, authentic. When you apply intent, you're not going to this broad market of 100,000 contacts. You are looking at who is currently looking at those things today, right? This week. And your pool is so much smaller. But the fact is that instead of you like fishing in the ocean, you're fishing in the puddle, right? And so that's where like you can catch more as a result of that.
Go fishing in a puddle. Did you just make that up? That's brilliant. That's fantastic. Chelsea Madden 2024. Go fish in a puddle. That's true though. So listeners are like, oh, it's great. Go fish in a puddle. But it's true because most salespeople drive around, cold call, whatever. They're fishing in the ocean. You got to make, okay. So now here, I'm going to come back to the intent data with all the stuff that Sales Intel does and all that jazz. It's just awesome. I want to go to the people who don't have access to the data. Mm-hmm. I've got no marketing team, or my marketing team sucks. They have no intent data. I've just got this list, or I'm cold, or I'm networking. Is there anything that a salesperson can do ahead of just a cold call that sort of creates their own intent data for the non intent data user?
Yeah. So most organizations have some type of marketing automation system that they have, like a HubSpot or a MailChimp or some type of email go-to market system. Yeah. Those all have a way to capture your audience, right? Google Analytics is another example of coming to your website. Website visitors are first-party intent. You want to engage those completely different than anything else because they already know about you. And they're now trying to make a decision if they want to talk to you, right? Do they want to buy that, office chair, or do they want to buy it from a competitor? They're doing their self-examination all on your website, but you want to be able to control that messaging. So you have a level of first-party intent with access to Google Analytics or HubSpot, or again, any of those services that typically come on the marketing side that salespeople could be using to strengthen their message. And
so
prioritization.
So if you're listening to this and this information has never been given to you, the to-do here for the sales listener is go talk to your marketing person, say, hey, do we have Google Analytics? Do we have any stats on that? Do we have an email capture or anything like that? Because I'd be shocked if they didn't get it, and I wouldn't be shocked because there's nothing against the marketing people. They're awesome. And sometimes I'm like, seriously, we have like this big list of 600 people hit our website. We haven't talked to any. Well, no, we were going to do some marketing to them. I'm like, all right, how about we get it rolling in the sales front? That's really good. What's a mistake people make when it comes to this intent? So someone does exactly what I just said. Oh, they get the website lead. You've already said it a couple times, I think, but what's a mistake that people make?
The biggest mistake is being Big Brother.
Yes.
Like, nobody wants to get an email that says, hi, I'm Chelsea. I'm selling office furniture. I know that you were on my website looking at office furniture. Do you want to call me?
Yes.
Nobody wants that.
Now, if you said, hey, I'm Chelsea, I'm selling apples, I'm like, you know what? I've heard of you. I heard you on the Advanced Selling podcast. You're the Apple sales guy.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. And I hope the Advanced Selling podcast listener wouldn't. Most of our listeners, I think, if they listen to our theme, they wouldn't do that, but it's a good reminder to not do that. But there's another side of this that goes the other way. There's a way to be almost too soft. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, talk about that a little bit. Is there, like, what's the right balance of saying, look, here's what I know, and here's some things, that I think we should talk about, versus like, hey, Chelsea, it's Bryan. What's going on? Like, that's kind of too weird too. Like, who are you? Why are you calling?
Yeah. So it comes back to those topics. If you know that that's what they're looking at, or if you get your first party intent and you know that they came to your pricing page, or they downloaded an ebook or an article, or they attended a webinar, those are all first party mechanisms of intent.
Yeah.
At that point, you want to be able to take that content and regurgitate it back to them in a more consultative way. Right. So if you're not using that to your advantage, I think you're being too soft by not giving them a more aggressive message on like, hey, here's how I really can help. Great. You're downloading this material, or you're watching it, or you're perusing my website, but here's what we can actually do.
Yes. Yeah. And you salespeople, you've got to make friends with your marketing department, because they likely have all this and they may or may not be good at what Chelsea's doing or recommending here, because this is some stuff that we see, and Bill and I, if you listen to past episodes, we love the marketing people, and there's some times when they think the answer to everything is a better PowerPoint for our pitch deck, and we don't think that's the case.
Yeah.
Because we learn about people through intent data, right? Good and bad. Like we learn, or we might learn that they're not, that we can't help them. And it'd be nice to tell them that, cut them loose. Is there a correlation between, now we do have at Blind Zebra some intent data. And so I'll give you a real example. I want to hear what you would do with this. So our VP of marketing, his name is Skip. He said, hey, this one company, I'm going to leave them nameless, has been all over our website. Multiple people, multiple pages of our website. The owner, CEO of this company, it's an IT firm, happens to be one of my best friends. And he's one that's always dabbled in buying things from me, and in 20 years never has. I'm like, oh, that's probably this person. But then I'm like, maybe not though. I don't know. So what do you do when you've got people that they're like fangirl people, maybe a little bit, or I don't know if you sell apples at the farmer's market, like, oh my God, let's go to Chelsea's website and go to Bryan. It's like, how do I make sure I don't waste time is I guess what I'm asking.
So I would say that it's not a silver bullet.
Okay.
And isn't going to be serving you up leads on a platter, and you are going to close every single one of those. That's unrealistic, right? And I would say that's probably the number 2 flaw with intent, is that people think that this is a done deal. It's not. You have work to do. But to address what you were saying, I believe in multi-threading. The more people I engage, the better, right? So yes, your CEO, good friend, I see that you're connected to him as a seller. And I know, Bryan, I should use you to talk to the CEO because I see you're connected on LinkedIn. But I'm going to still do my due diligence, and I'm going to go after the sales head and the marketing head and the HR head, because you sell sales consulting and curriculum. And so I'm not going to not cover those. And I'm also going to go a layer down, and I'm going to talk to all the managers, the individual contributor managers, because if they need help, they might get this buzz in their ear and then go to their manager to kind of create that internal progression. So I believe more is better. And I believe better is better, which is how do you prioritize who to go after, right, at the company, why you should be talking to them, what material you should be sending them, and basically combining it all together.
That is just brilliant. There's the mic. There's always a mic drop in the episode. There's no mic to drop on your front. Mine's sitting here in front of me. But here, so everyone knows we are huge fans of the multi-threading. We are big fans of Gong. We are power users of Gong. Gong's data is indisputable about multi-threading and win rates, and indisputable to a exponential multiple, like a 5x, meaning that if you multi-thread on both sides, seller and buyer, you can get up to a 5x better win rate. So if you're listening to this, here's a mistake. And we didn't talk about this, but now that I'm hearing it from you, I'm the one on the website, Bryan Neal's, on Sales Intel. And you think, oh, he's the founder. That sounds good. You're still better off multi-threading.
Absolutely.
To Skip, our VP of marketing, to Stephanie, who's our CEO. I promise you, because if you try to deal with me, I'm all over the place. I don't follow through on stuff. I'm too busy. You know what I mean? Yeah. We get nowhere. I think people make the mistake. They think, oh, that's the one. She's the one. I just got to talk to Chelsea and she's it. And that is such a huge mistake. So I love your advice of the any intent data is just the key to a door that goes into that firm or that company. Is that fair?
That's right.
That's really great.
And something that you also mentioned, like with multi-threading, I think it's super important that you think about the person you're sending the message to. Oh. Bryan, if I was going to message you, I would be sending entirely something different than when I message Stephanie.
Yes.
I want my messages to be authentic and real, because even though you might not take action and Stephanie does, that psychological component of like, hey, I saw Sales Intel. Hey, that was relevant to me. You're going to start connecting the dots whenever you have internal conversations. And hey, Bryan, do you want to talk to me about using intent? Yes. It's not going to get you anywhere. So you want it to be personalized and authentic for each of the personas that you go after. And that's a really important thing.
That's fantastic. I even think about if you, let's say, I don't know if Sales Intel has a podcast, but if they did, you might call Stephanie to talk about, goal achievement for 2025. You might call me and say, hey, I see you got a sales podcast too. We'd love to have you on the sales podcast. Then we get in this little chit chat like, hey, by the way, I'm talking to Stephanie. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Yeah. I go down to Steph like, hey, I just talked to Chelsea. I was on her podcast. It was awesome. They're great. Let's do business with them. It's exactly a great lesson for you listeners to hear this, that do not, and this is a absolute huge advanced selling podcast and blind zebra cuss word. We do not say or think the word decision maker. End of story. There is no such thing. There are multiple people involved. There's multiple elements of a process. And I think intent data can pull people down a path to think that it's the person.
Yeah.
That's the target. It's not the person. That's brilliant. Really smart.
And I mean, admittedly, with intent data, we can't give you who. That's
interesting.
Interesting. And that's one of the frustrations that we get a lot from sellers, right?
Yeah.
On the customer success side, I have that question always. I need to know who. No, I can't give you who. And then it's like, it doesn't work. Well, you have to multi-thread,
yes,
right, first.
Yes.
And you have your messaging connected to what those individuals care about from your service offering. And then you prioritize that way. The other thing that I would say, and that this is my third point is a no-no.
Yeah.
Is that it's not just, the first party intent and the intent that you get from providers like Sales Intel and others. That's not at all. That's not everything that's out there, right? Like you still are going to have luck by like driving down the road and seeing and being like, hey, let me have a conversation with this guy. I think I should go somewhere with that, right? So like, it's not like just put all of your eggs in that basket. Continue to do the behaviors that you're having and A/B test it. Bring it in as something to like, hey, is this more successful for me as I continue to, do all of the same routine and processes that I've had in the past.
That's awesome. It's a great little story. There's a gentleman who's, I'm not going to use his name, so I didn't get permission to, who takes care of our plants in our office. And he cold called us right when we moved and said, hey, here's what I do. I do full plant service. I bring all the plants. I take care of them. You don't have to do anything. It's this much a month. We're like, yeah, let's do it. Nicest guy, great guy. But he is a genius. All he does is follow LinkedIn, look for people who are moving, who announce a move, and then he cold calls them, hits them up on LinkedIn, cold calls them, and that's all he does.
Well, that's
all he does. Right? I know. That's what I mean. It's brilliant. Any salesperson, you know what I mean? Like if you sell construction equipment, you could be like, hey, there's a new construction company, or they're expanding, or they're opening an office. The intent data is like right in front of us, is what I'm trying to say, right? Right in front of us.
Yep.
We just have to use it. And people just like, oh my gosh, this is great. So, well, this has been awesome. So, first tell our audience, our members, if you don't have intent data in your place, you need to hook Chelsea up with your VP of marketing and marketing director. Is that cool to do?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. How do people get a hold of you first?
Yeah. So I'm chelsea.madden@salesintel.io. You can email me directly and I'll coordinate the internal conversations, but definitely intent is something that Sales Intel does very well on multiple levels. So the first party intent, as I mentioned, your website traffic, but then also that third party of like what they're researching external.
Yeah, that's great. And can you spell your name so everybody can
spell it? CHELSEA.MADDEN@salesintel.io.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I can't believe you didn't ask me if I was related to John Madden. That would have been.
Are you?
John Madden, but not John Madden.
I just refereed the Thanksgiving Day game. And it was in honor of John Madden, actually. The players wore a little sticker, like little patches for John Madden. We had a coin about him. It was really, really cool.
That is cool.
It's really, really cool. Well, this has been awesome. Thanks for being here. If you don't know what intent data or intent is about, Byron, not the kind of intention that Bill and I usually talk about, different kind. You should look it up, Google it, ChatGPT it, all those other things. Sales Intel is as good as they get when it comes to helping sellers with intent data, and it is an extremely effective way to build your business for your salesperson. And, if your marketing department's too cheap, we just gave you 2 examples. You can be like my plant guy and just go to LinkedIn and watch things and reach out to people, but use this and then multi-thread. That was a mic drop too. Go fish in a puddle. That's it. If you want to know how to become certified in the Blind Zebra Sales Operating System, just go to blind-zebra.com or email me personally, Bryan@blind-zebra.com. Chelsea, thanks for being here. We'll see you next time in the Advanced Selling Podcast.